Hi, my name is Misha Miller, and I work for the Washoe County School District in the 21st Century Learning Division. And today I'm here to talk to you about screencasting. Our objectives today is to define screencasting, discuss purposes for both teacher and student use, look at different screencasting and whiteboard websites and apps, and also talk about how screencasting fits into 21st century learning. Remember that whenever we're planning to integrate technology in our classroom, we always want to look at that through the lens of the 6 dimensions for 21st century learning. So when planning the lesson, we want to think about how can we incorporate collaboration, knowledge construction, real-world problem-solving and innovation, use of technology for learning, self-regulation, and instilled communication into our lessons and activities, whether that be using technology to enhance those 21st century learning competencies or not. So what is screencasting? Screencasting simplified is taking a digital recording of your computer screen output or capturing your screen and then often attaching audio narration to it. So what I'm doing right now is screencasting. I have prepared a presentation. I'm capturing my screen and I'm including audio with my presentation. So I am screencasting right now. So what do you need to screencast? A device, could be a PC, Mac, a tablet, an iPad. You need a microphone. Some computers come with built-in microphone. And that would be similar to using a desktop microphone. So when using that, think about where you are, your setting, if there's going to be a lot of ambient noise, because a built-in microphone or a desktop microphone is going to pick up that ambient noise. Right now I'm using a headset microphone, and I found that that provides the best audio quality for me. It keeps the microphone in position next to my mouth so that if I'm looking at something or want to glance at notes, the microphone is still with me. Unlike if I was using a desktop microphone, when I turn away, my voice gets softer. And so I found that a headset microphone is best suited to my needs. And then also some like to record themselves as they present their screencast. And if that's the case, you want to have a built-in camera or a webcam attached to your computer so that you can record your image as you're delivering your screencast. So why do I want to screencast? I think most people would tell you the biggest reason for screencasting is to flip their classroom. And so I'm going to have you watch this video, how to flip a class, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about it. So this math teacher shared with you how she flipped her classroom by having the students watch and learn from her lecture at home, and then during class time they work on their homework. So they do their application problems in the classroom instead, and how that's helped to alleviate a lot of frustration with learning about the math and then going home to do the homework in isolation. Now they can do the homework with the teacher there to facilitate and other classmates to collaborate with. Some other teachers flip their lecture so that they can do rich investigations during class time, or facilitate dynamic classroom discussions, or conduct science labs. You might want to screencast so that you can teach your students even when you're absent. This teacher had to be off for an unexpected chunk of time due to jury duty, and so he made screencasts for his students to do while the sub was there, so they could continue learning during that time and not miss out on any content while he was away. Provide students with feedback might be a reason for you to start screencasting. This is an example of a teacher that uses screencasting to provide personalized feedback to her students. So she'll have the document of the students writing right there on the screen, and instead of marking all over the paper, she'll talk through the feedback of the paper as she looks at the paper. Also uses screencasting for quick day-to-day activities to let parents know what their student is doing, and also to give parents an overview of a lesson. So this teacher uses screencasting to improve parent communication, as well as providing personalized feedback to students. And if you scroll down here, and when you have time to investigate further, you can look specifically at two teachers' examples of how they're using that. Differentiate learning. So here's a quick 31-second video that shows how students are watching screencasts prepared by the teacher, and how she's using the different screencasts she's prepared to differentiate the learning to students in the classroom. Notice each one of them is participating in a different lesson. Provide a library of support to my students. This teacher, Paul Groves, started screencasting because it was a great way for him to share ideas with images to help the students to conceptually understand it better than just an auditory lecture. And so he began screencasting. I really like his comment here where he talks about the videos have saved him time, and while providing students with anytime instruction, it provides a library of support for students. If they need to go back and see these ideas again, they can, rather than coming in and asking me to explain it over and over again. What students like about it is being able to go over it on their own until it makes sense to them. They're more in control of the presentation of the information. I really liked that quote. You might want to use screencasting so that you can capture students' metacognitive and problem-solving skills. This teacher talks about how she's used screencasting and she's created 50+ videos. But in 2 years, her students have created 2,000 screencast videos. Some are lessons that they've created for peers or to show mastery of a subject. She talks about how the majority are live problem-solving screencasts demonstrating their metacognition and problem-solving skills. So instead of solving a problem silently using paper and pencil or reading a book silently, they do so while narrating their thinking orally using a screencasting app. I can send them math story problems or excerpts of text. Then they highlight, annotate, draw, and write while voicing their metacognition. She says her video lessons have been a great way to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of her instruction, and has redefined assessment and student agency for her class. And so kind of in tandem with what that teacher just shared, I used to present problems for students to solve in my math classroom as well. And I called them math on locations. So it was me out in the world presenting the students with a math problem. For example, welcome to another episode of Math on Location. It is so this is just me creating a presentation with images and text. In this case, I used Keynote to create the presentation, and then I used screencasting software. At that time when I was creating these, I used Screenflow. And so that just allowed me to capture my screen, which was this Keynote presentation, and then put audio to it. And so notice these are quick 4.5 minute, 5-minute videos that present math problems for the students. So they're engaging because I'm part of it. They're in different parts of the country, so I usually did them while I was traveling so they get to see different parts of the country, and it's a real-world application of math, so it's more meaningful for them. So why do I want students to screencast? All the examples before were mostly for teachers to screencast, but if I really want to take it to that 21st century learning level, I want my students to be using the technology. I want my students to be creating the screencasts. So why would I want students to create them? We touched on this a little bit earlier, but one is to make thinking and learning visible. So if I'm creating a learner-centered classroom, students can construct and reflect on their own content knowledge and thinking using screencasting. So again, it gets to that metacognition. I'm actually being able to, as a teacher, listen to how students are solving that problem or confronted with that problem, or thinking through a process. Skilled communication. So this is one of the 6 dimensions that we focus on, and we ask teachers to think about when they're planning their lessons. And in skilled communication, I'm asking students to look at extended or multimodal communication, which is perfect when they're creating a screencast because they're having to think about, okay, what text do I need to include? What visual cues do I need to include? They're having to prepare a script of what they're wanting to say during the screencast. And more importantly, they're having to think about a specific audience that they're creating that screencast for, whether it be a public service announcement, whether it be reteaching a concept. Maybe they're a 6th grade student and they're reteaching a concept for the 4th graders in their school and creating a screencast for that. So what is their intended audience? It gives an opportunity to empower students to be masters of their own learning. We can see here in this example Jonathan Bergman's story of how he allows students to learn at their own pace. And if I click here, I encourage you to watch this video about the specifics of his story. But the reason why he's using screencasting and decided to flip his classroom is to create more of a mastery learning in his classroom, where students have to work through material at their own pace. So students are in different places, but they have to show at least a 75% mastery of that material before they move on to the next thing. And they're doing that during class time. So as a teacher, he's able to go around and facilitate when students are stuck or need clarification, or maybe to aid in or assist in a lab experiment that some students are conducting. So it has helped him to individualize learning for his students, and he's seen that students are learning much more from this type of a format than they were from the traditional classroom that he was teaching in before. And while that's not necessarily the students creating the screencast, it is showing how students are taking ownership for their own learning, and that's why I included it on this slide. Redefining learning in the classroom is another reason why you want students to screencast. In this article from Edutopia that I'm going to ask you to read a little bit in more detail, it shares the SAMR model, and the SAMR model stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So basically it's saying, are you using the technology to enhance your learning, just to substitute, or to augment, or are you actually using the technology to transform your classroom? Have you modified the assignment that it wouldn't be as good without the integration of technology? Redefinition, would that same assignment not even be possible without the integration of technology? And I like how it uses screencasting as an example in each of those 4 areas. So how can you use screencasting as substitution, as augmentation, as modification, and as redefinition in your classroom? So I'm going to ask you to look and read through this and look at the examples in greater detail. And then student reflection. We've talked about this before, but student reflection is such a powerful thing. And in this article, it talks about a recent study entitled Learning by Thinking by Stefano, 2014. And it focuses on the importance of reflection as one of critical components of learning. In short, it says if you want your students to retain what they have learned long term, you have to make time for students to reflect on what they have learned, not just on what they've done. One of the, I think, biggest benefits to being a secondary teacher is having multiple periods and the opportunity to teach a lesson more than once. You get an immediate application of, I'm going to reflect on my teaching during this period. This is the first time I've taught this lesson, and I can immediately make changes or adaptations to make it a better lesson for my next group of kids. So reflection is so powerful. So speaking of reflection, I thought it would be a really good time for us just to pause and reflect, take a teacher time out, and think about the topic of this webinar or screencast is screencasting, right? So I want to just to share out what I've done so far. So I'm screencasting right now. First, I created my presentation, and for this, I created it using Google Slides. Could have used PowerPoint or Prezi or an Active Inspire flip chart or etc. I jotted down notes in the presenter notes section in Google Slides so I wouldn't forget to speak to everything I wanted to for that slide. I didn't write a script because the screencast is lengthy, and the purpose is to share information about screencasting. I think of it as teaching a lesson. I didn't script out my lessons before I taught them, but I did plan them in detail and think through everything I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Okay. I'm going to compare that to when I used to use screencasting to do my math on locations. When I did my math on location episodes, they were short, usually 5 minutes or less, and I wanted to be very specific with my wording as I presented the math problem to them. So I wrote out a script to follow. So for example, the first thing I did, so here's an example of math on location that I used Keynote to prepare. So I prepared all of my slides, bringing in text and images, and then I wrote out a script as to what I wanted to say on each slide. Now that's fairly easy to do when you're producing short screencasts. And it really depends on what your purpose is and who your audience is. And I wanted to be very specific and detailed in this podcast, this screencast. And so I wanted to prepare a script. Whereas with today's webinar on screencasting, since it's somewhat lengthy and I had a lot I wanted to share with you, I wanted to, and I'm going to bring over how in Google Slide, off to the side here of my screen, I have my notes. And some are a little scripted on what I want to say, and some might just be bullet points of things that I want to talk about while on that slide. And so I can have it in a paper copy, or I can have, because with this specific screencasting software that I'm using, Screencast-O-Matic, it allows me to choose the region of the screen that I want to capture. And so I'm just capturing part of my screen, and I have my notes off to the side where you can't see them. unless I want you to, like that. Even though I didn't script out word for word what I want to say during this webinar screencast, I did practice by going through slide by slide prior to recording and thinking through what I wanted to say for each slide. And I also checked to make sure that all the links in the slides worked so that there wouldn't be any delays or problems while I was recording. I want to also point out that I have my presentation that's guiding my audio and my talk, but I'm able to click out and go to the internet. I'm able to incorporate other software programs, so I'm able to capture anything that's on my computer screen and access all those different resources during my screencast. So let's look at some ideas for using screencasting in the different subjects that you teach. This is a blog post by Chris Lote. And he does a nice job of breaking down some different ideas for using screencasting in math and in science, social studies, language arts, PE, and art. I love this. Have fun making your screencasts. They are a great way for kids to show what they know. I'm going to ask you to look at the section that you're most interested in because of the content you teach at this time. Another excellent resource for looking at screencasting in the classroom is this Digital Differentiation with Screencasting ebook. And so this can be found on, here's the iTunes preview page of it. It's a collection of resources showing teachers and students what it takes to make a screencast video for sharing knowledge and others. And so here's a series of resources. I want you to pay close attention to the e-publication. They're all free. All these resources are free. And you can click on View in iTunes and you can view the video portions. And then you can download the ebook. I happen to have that to show you. And so here is the ebook. And it was a collaborative effort by some Apple Distinguished Educators. And notice it has embedded video, how to create screencasts. And each of the different resources I've shared with you have shown using a different tool or app or website to create a screencast. And briefly we'll talk about different ones that you can use to create screencasts, but I thought it was important to expose you to lots of different ones so that you could find the one that best suits your purpose. Tutorial. So really kind of just a comprehensive ebook about using screencasts and creating screencasts. So I encourage you to check that out. I'm going to share with you today 3 different screencasting websites. They're all free, and I've used all of them for different purposes. We're going to start with Screencast-O-Matic, and that's actually what I'm using right now to create this webinar screencast. Let's take us to the website. And so you can create a free account. They do have a GoPro version, and that allows you to record for a longer amount of time. The free version allows you to record up to 15 minutes. And I used the free version many times, and then did upgrade to the Pro version when I started using this tool to create the webinars, because as you know, the webinars are longer than 15 minutes. But super easy to use. And I'm going to have you watch this quick demo about using Screencast-O-Matic. So you should have a fairly good understanding of how to use the recording and how easy it is. The ability to pause and then start again. I do that frequently while I'm using Screencast-O-Matic, especially when they're these lengthier webinars. I wanted to point out that you have access to examples of teachers using and students using, and when you start to look at comparing them, they have a nice list here of what you're able to do with the free version, and then if you find that you need to upgrade to the Pro version. But I think for many of you, the free version would meet your needs. I know that if I was still in the classroom, the free version would definitely meet my needs if I was recording my math on locations. And especially for student use, having a limit of 15 minutes is pretty lengthy. And sometimes you're wanting students to be very concise and specific, and having a screencasting tool that limits the amount of time you can use can be very beneficial at times. Screener is another one we're going to talk about, and I'm going to ask you to watch this 1-minute tour video. So you can see now, comparing Screencast-O-Matic and Screener, how it's very similar. You pick the specific region of your screen that you'd like to capture. There's a record button, there's a pause button, there's a stop button. They both have different options for sharing out the video when it's done, whether that be from social media or through a link or embedding it. Again, it's web-based, and it also has a limit as to how long of a recording, and I want to say Screener's only 5 minutes. You don't have to download anything. You're doing it strictly from the web. And then Jing. Jing's actually the first one I used, and then I played around and messed with Screener, and now I find myself using Screencast-O-Matic the most. Jing, you actually download. It's a free download. And it also has a 5-minute cap. And so I'm thinking Jing might be a great solution for student videos. So very concise, 5 minutes. If you are using a computer lab, you could easily download and install Jing in your computer lab and have students doing it, creating their screencasts there. And so if you're downloading, you don't have to have the internet access. Whereas with Screencast-O-Matic and Screener, I have to have access to the internet because they're a web-based tool. But Jing, I'm going to download it and install it on my computer so I'm able to do the recording maybe somewhere where I don't have access to the internet. For those that are fortunate enough to have iPads or access to iPads, here are 3 different whiteboard apps for the iPad. And right here is a nice comparison chart. There are a lot of different whiteboard apps out there. And this resource does a nice job of sharing the differences and the features that are available or not between Explain Everything, Doceri, Educreation, Show Me, Teach, S3, and Screenchomp. So if you have access to iPads and you're wanting to incorporate screencasting for student use on the iPads, this would be a great resource to check out. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today, and the 3 I'm going to talk about is Doceri, Educreations, and Explain Everything. And Educreations actually has a web-based application as well as an iPad app. And so if you're wanting to be able to access both via computer and via iPad, this might be your favorite option. Doceri has an Explorer version that's free, but really if you want to do everything it has to offer, you want to upgrade to the full version, which is $4.99. Remember that if you have a class set of iPads, you can take advantage of the volume discount and check to see if that app is discounted for volume purchases. Educreations is a free app. I used Educreations at a math camp that I taught this past summer, and the only thing that was a drawback for me was that students had to create and record their screencast within the same time frame. So it wasn't easy for them to save it and come back and revisit it later. It had to be done all in one sitting. And so just recently, Educreations has come out with a pro version, which does allow you to save and come back and revisit, which is huge. It is at a cost though, and it's $99 per year for the teacher. And then students just save to that one account and are able to go back and revisit and edit. And then also Explain Everything, which is a $2.99 app purchase. And so really a lot of them offer the same things. Some are a little bit more user-friendly or more simplistic. Some have a little bit more functionality. And it just comes down to what your purpose is. If it's teacher use, You may want to go with Doceri or Explain Everything. And if it's student use, for ease of use, you may want to go with Educreations. Kathy Schrock proposes that there's 4 steps to screencasting. The first step is to decide upon a clear purpose for your screencast, whether it be share content knowledge, present a problem like the math on location, provide students feedback on their work, or to have them share the thinking process as they were confronted with a problem and how they worked through it. And think about who is the audience for the screencast, and then prepare the slides and write the script. 2, the next step is to prepare the stage. So what will you capture on your computer? Do you have the programs and the websites ready to go and open and just minimized so that you can cut down transition time? 3, tell the story in scenes. Okay, pause when you need to. A lot of the screencasting software allows you to pause and then press record again. Oftentimes that's helpful when you transition or you're confronted with the next screen and you want to gather your thoughts, so take advantage of the ability to pause. And then 4, careful narration. So you want to speak slowly and carefully so it's easy for those watching to follow along. So what we've talked about can be found on her website, as well as some proposed rubrics for screencasting. And so if I scroll down here, there's some sample. There's a lot of really great information in this blog post on Kathy Schrock's website. Or blog, rather. And rubrics are near the bottom. So she shares 6 different rubrics that you can take a look at and modify to your needs. A lot of them are designed for students, and so this rubric is used to evaluate screencasts. So in this case, this one's looking at the introduction to the screencast, ideas relating to the term, visual quality, audio quality, use of technology, professionalism. Some of the podcasts are downloadable and then to open up. Here's one that's a little bit more simplistic. And so 4 categories: planning and organization, screencasting video, content, and screencasting audio. In this one, it has categories for introduction to screencast, content, text elements, layout, citations, images, text, screencasting technology, narration. And so you can see that there's a lot of differences between the rubrics, and so my suggestion to you is based on your purpose and what you want the students to screencast about. You would want to create your own rubric to suit your needs, but definitely take advantage of the rubrics on her site to give you ideas of what should be included on the rubric. So you know that with all of our webinars, we like to come back and revisit which of the 6 dimensions for 21st century learning we think are the best fit for this technology tool, and in this case screencasting, because you never want to force the technology. You want to use the technology when it enhances your lessons or transforms your lessons. And so in this case, I think the best fit, depending on what your purpose is, you may see other dimensions that fit, but skilled communication and then potentially collaboration. If you have a group of students that are collaborating on a screencast, that can be really powerful. As always, we like to close our videos with the disclaimer that our school district does not currently have a policy in place for students creating accounts using Web 2.0 tools and publishing online work. So you want to be familiar with relevant laws for this, and you want to talk to your principal, your site administrator about using the technology in your classroom, and definitely want to seek written permission from parents for students to use the tool or app. To find out more ideas from all of our different webinars and resources, you want to check out our WCSD Pinterest board. And then you can certainly hone in on just the screencasting resources by clicking on the screencasting board. I encourage you to visit our website at wcsd21.com to learn more about being a 21st century educator and our badge program. And I thank you for taking the time to learn more about screencasting with me today. To access all the links from this presentation, here is a link that will take you to this presentation so you can click through and access all of the links.